Hey everyone, welcome to this commentary video on my solo horrific vision run of Stormwind. Before we start though, it's just important that I mentioned this. I forgot to show it in the actual video I ran. So these are the traits I had at the time, minus one of these vision hunter stacks. This is what I'm at now after the run. So I had obviously this, I'd gone down right side for triple expansive mind. I don't have the res one, and that allowed me to go to triple clear sight. I could have probably grabbed some chests in this run, but I didn't feel comfortable with the route just yet, so I didn't want to risk anything unnecessarily. Elite extermination is essentially what this made this run possible, and then vision hunter. One rank of that just gave a permanent 5% haste and movement speed for pretty much the whole run. Without further ado though, let's get to the video. One moment. Here we go. So, play on this. So, just in terms of my general gear setup, I'm running a triple searing, single thought harvester, and double death throws build. Just gives me a lot of AoE. Most of my gear is from the the Eternal Palace raid. I've got 2 pieces of corruption. I'll just pause so I can talk about them. I'm running the haste proc at 35 corruption and echoing void at 25 corruption. It's honestly just the best I have access to at the moment, so it's what I run, but there's a couple decent options. Like echoing void I'd say is probably one of the most straightforward options, but you also have Twilight Devastation being a very solid option. You also have just base haste stat or base crit stat being pretty good. Mind Flay Tentacles aren't too bad even after the nerfs. Infinite Stars is very strong. Gushing Wounds is very good. So if you have any of those, feel free to put them on for this. But I would not recommend going beyond 40 corruption, because a Grand Delusion hit will probably get you killed. As for essences, you see I'm running Essence of the Focusing Iris. I'll just scrub back a bit so you can see that. Essence of the Focusing Iris. Breath of the Dying is mainly to make sure that my corruption stays at a reasonable level, along with Conflict and Strife just for more AoE. I didn't really feel like Lucid had much value here, and Purification Protocol for the extra AoE damage. And for talents, just running a standard talent build, so Shadow Void, Dark Void, Psychic Horror, Shadow Crash, and Legacy of the Void with Lingering Insanity. Body and Soul I just took for mobility. I don't think these options are worthwhile. Psychic Horror is the only thing I would consider on this line. Basically the only thing I would change about this build is maybe you took Auspicious Spirits if the mobs have more health, like if you're running with masks, because every mask you add makes things have more health. That's the only thing I'd really change. There's also the option of going Misery, but it's a little bit too slow to set up, and it's only really better if you can't get the mobs stacked, which using Clever Line of Sight, there's always a way to get everything stacked. Pretty much always. So let's get started. I abuse Shadow Meld in this route quite a bit, so we'll just skip ahead to the vision opening. I abuse Shadow Meld quite a bit in this route, so we're going to start by going left side. However, in this first pull, I get dazed. I don't know by what, because I'm not near anything. But unfortunately, this means I have to do this pull now. I was planning on doing a giant meld skip and coming back to this later. As you'll see, whenever I go through this zone later, I always do it with some form of a meld skip. I don't want to use beam here, but I probably could have afforded to use it. I just wanted to make sure it was definitely up for the next zone. But I think even if I use it here, it's up for one of the important pulls in the next zone, so I definitely could have. I'm playing a little bit sloppy here. You'll notice the range guy, or you may or may not have noticed, I threw double dots on it just because I knew I wasn't going to be able to bother going to a line of sight point, so I just did that. But yeah, so we're doing the skip now. I'm getting slowed by that Mind Flay. I'm going to jump right on top of these guys and meld. That's going to drop all the previous combat. I'll do another video of this later when I do a 1 mask run, because I'm going to be race changing to human for progression because they have a better DPS ratio. I'll upload a different video of me doing it as human with one mask active, just so you can see that it's very doable without using the Night Elf racial. Just using the Night Elf racial does save a little bit of time. So we're rounding up those 4 packs, so notably if we backtrack a little bit so you can see exactly what I was thinking, we grab, as I mount up I go right, grab this pack because it's forced, otherwise we wouldn't play it. Grab this pack to the left. I kind of hesitated a bit here on whether or not to grab it or to do it with the next pull. Grab this pack here and I finish on top of these 2 ranged enemies and the wheel breaker. Now this pull gets a little bit sloppy. This zone is really awkward because of the jumping debuff, so just keep that in mind. That some of these pulls I could have done a lot cleaner. I had to cancel that void eruption because I was worried about the swirly. I was gonna greed it out at first, but I'm like, that's probably not wise. My health gets a little bit low here, so after this you'll notice I Shadow Mend a couple times. But this next pull is what pulls should more so look like. So especially if you have line of sight of everything you're pulling, you just throw some dots out, and then you just, you know, Mind Seer. You should actually Dark Void first, but I didn't have it available. Put a Dark Void then. I dispersed to get out of that leap, but I still took the insanity damage from it, or the sanity damage from it. But as you can see, my sanity's still reasonably healthy. Like, I'm not going to lose too much sanity this fight that I run out of sanity before this guy dies. Not even, no chance, dude. And every single elite enemy I'm killing is giving me that 200 sanity back, so it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I'm just clicking all these bombs. So I guess it's worth quickly mentioning your game plan going into a pack, what it should look like. As you're pulling the pack together, you want to identify which mobs are ranged, which mobs aren't ranged, and make sure that you plan accordingly. So if there's ranged mobs in one pack in particular of the multiple packs you plan on pulling, try and have the pull finished on top of that pack. That's what I did with the first pull I did here. And then you just want to start by vampiric touching something. While things are still grouping, you can do Mind Seers, or you can do Shadowed Pains. It doesn't really matter. Then once they're all grouped, you want to Dark Void into Void Eruption. Or if you have focused Azurite Beam, that should be the first thing you cast, because A, you can cast it while moving, and B, it tends to kill all the small mobs instantly, so Dark Voiding them first is usually a waste. On this fight in particular, you'll notice I actually use the leap to my advantage. So these spawn, I try to like proc the leap, because the way the leap works in this area, if you're not aware, is I've got this little countdown on the bottom there. You see it just went off. If you are standing still when that countdown finishes, it won't leap you until you do start moving. Just skipping ahead though real quick, is that right here we are going to use our second Shadow Meld just to drop that Mind Flayer Tentacle. If we didn't drop it with Shadow Meld, we would just kill it with Dark Void, and it's actually not that bad. Those guys daze me unfortunately, so playing this mob takes a little bit longer than I'd like. A Dark Void here to hit all 3 enemies. I didn't think I got hit by that, but seems like I did. And then I got a haste reduction from the Shadow Hunters, or the Light Hunters. My sanity gets a little bit low here, but I know this guy gives me sanity back, so I'm not particularly worried. But what I was saying about the previous zone, you can basically load up one of the jumps, so you can prepare to jump in advance, kinda. This is one of the cleanest ways I do, by the way. I Vampiric Touch, I Shadow Pain in the enemies, I Dark Void once they're all in, and then I just Mind Seer spam until everything's dead. This build has very, very high consistent damage throughput, but it also takes a fair bit of setup. This guy was in stealth and didn't get pulled with the last pull, and I thought I had done, so I actually nearly died to sanity here, but luckily I had good stuff happening. What I didn't notice is that this orb was already giving me sanity back even though I wasn't in it. Now that Touch of the Abyss I see going off at range, so I Dispersion here. in a perfect world, I would have silenced that far mob, but he was too far away. I get gripped as I tried to cast that beam, which is really, really rough. That guy has silence, but I probably could have gotten away with not silencing him at all. And then I'm going to go into this guy. So Void Eruption, Bolt, Vampiric Touch. I don't know what my plan was there. But yeah, now I'm just bringing these enemies around using this line of sight point. And this caster comes around. No questions asked. I don't know how this Blight Eruption works, I'll be honest. All I know is it does a bunch of sanity damage. My guess is it also does sanity damage to anyone within the circle. But it's unavoidable sanity damage, and usually you deal with it by just spreading. But in solo it just does sanity damage to everyone since there's only one player. The way to deal with these eyes, there's two ways. I'm only going to use one way in this particular instance. But there's two ways of dealing with these eyes. The first is to line of sight them. So if you line of sight them, they won't do sanity loss on you. The second one is to not face them. And I know it's hard to tell that I'm not facing them. But as long as you're not facing the Eyes of Corruption, or the Eye of Chaos, and this boss spawns quite a few of them. You can spawn as many as like 3 or 4, maybe even 5. It spawns like a fair amount. If you do face them, you'll just take sanity loss. So ideally you don't want to face them. You just want to keep them behind you. And Matthias will periodically go like invisible, so just make sure you kind of follow where the swirlies are spawning to know where he's going to come back out of stealth, because he's the one casting the swirlies and he's casting them around his character. But you can't hit him while he's in stealth, notably. Like, he properly disappears from the encounter. I'm going to do my third meld skip of the dungeon right here. If you're really bad at dealing with Matthias Shaw, like you just can't get it right, just lust and burn and do the best you can. Like, as much as it sucks because you'll lose downtime because he keeps going away and stealthing, it's by far the cleanest way of dealing with it. Okay, so I'm pulling this guy in. I Vampiric Touch him because I know either A, he dies last. Like, there's basically two scenarios. A, he doesn't die last, but he dies quickly, that means. Which means that I don't have to deal with him as long, because he's by far the most important enemy to die in this pack. So I'm just going to kill him Mindseer here. Or B, he does die last, and thus my Vampiric Touch gets maximum uptime in terms of its procs. I keep Shadowed Pain on that appendage. I now know it's dead for sure. I dot up one of those appendages as well. I'm going to Vampiric Touch here. I'm going to Dark Void because I know everything's up. Void Eruption. I also Vampiric Embrace just to keep myself healthy here, because this pull is pretty scary. She gets slowed by one of those appendages when it knocks me up. That's fine. You just make sure we don't get pulled in by that silence. He's going to do it again because our dot damage has done a fair bit just by being available, to be honest. So, dealing with him, all of the appendages basically died to dot damage and Mindseer Cleave. They don't actually have that much health, so as long as they're within cleave range of the boss, just do your single target rotation while keeping them with Shadowed Pain. You don't need to bother too much with Vampiric Touch past the first target. The double death rays we're running is going to do a lot of Shadowed Pain damage, so you don't need to worry about it much at all. We're going to go to the left here. I was planning on going to the right, but I got dazed off my mount, so change of plans. I use this area as a line of sight point. This is the first time I've ever tried this particular line of sight point, and it actually worked really well. I'll definitely use this in future runs should something go wrong. And even if something doesn't go wrong, I may plan some of my strategies around using that line of sight point, because that was surprisingly good. That mob back there, I just basically made sure it was dotted up and then I ignored it. And that means that your dots in combination with your procs of like Purification and Breath of the Dying should deal with them quite easily. So yeah, right now everything's going pretty well. In comparison to my Death Knight, my first orb was used a bit earlier than it should have been. I actually stood in a few things you might have noticed on that first mini-boss of the Lost Zone that we've played first. I stood in like a fair bit, and so I wasted a fair bit of time. I actually went the wrong direction here. I don't know if I thought I was done or I just couldn't see where the last cage was. But yeah, I wasted a little bit of time there due to inefficiency in my movement. So I'm going to drop an orb right here. And because I'm restoring sanity, there's no reason to meld skip this. And I'll explain why I'm not meld skipping this either, because we could have obviously skipped that no problem if I wanted to. I just chose not to, right? So I'm going to leave now. I don't leave instantly because I'd like to give an opportunity for my Dark Void and other similar spells to come off cooldown. And now, while I'm melted here, I'm going to just move forward, get in combat with all these things. This Mind Flayer dude in particular seems to leave combat if you just leave line of sight of it. I'm going to dot that guy with Shadowed Pain. I'm going to Vampiric Touch this guy. It doesn't land. Now it lands. He's going to drop Rain of Fire. I'm going to move out of the Rain of Fire. I'm going to Azurite Beam here. Just get some good cleave under that. That Portal Keeper you see at range doing the Mind Flayer on me. That guy, the way I'm going to deal with him is by double dotting him. But yeah, like right now, I just use the Dark Void. I'm doing a lot of Mindseer Cleave. So right now I'm going to throw him double dots. And I'm going to continue making sure that Zardoth of the Black something keeps getting dealt with. And I'm going to completely ignore the guy at range, because he's doing some damage, but not enough to kill me. And my dots are going to kill him before it's an issue. Alright, so now we mount up, and this is actually where we're going to use our meld. We could backtrack instead, and then we don't have to go like this. But I couldn't find a good way of doing that, so I meld right here. Because then I skip all of the tentacles. I don't have to deal with any of the tentacles I don't want to deal with. I get a Mindseer proc here, which is so good, because it basically just solos those Portal Keepers. And now I'm going to move into the mini-boss. This mini-boss is the most awkward enemy in the entire vision, because it requires an absurd amount of movement. Just make sure that you're using powered shields, Shadowed Pains while you're on the move. I can't emphasize this enough, make sure that you keep Void Bolt on cooldown. You can stop for short moments to cast Mind Blast and Void Eruption if you need to, but otherwise avoid standing still. I wasn't going to beam this pack, but then I realized that I only had 2 packs left. What you can do, for sure, I don't do it here, but in retrospect I could have done it if I wanted to, is, obviously I had the wrong way there, which is kind of funny, but you can see this door I'm about to head through. You can pull those 2 guys through this doorway, powered shield for speed here, and pull him with this Portal Master as well, because this guy's really easy. I'm going to just basically do my single target rotation on this guy, and the other dudes nearby will just die to the passive cleave of Mindseer and like Void Eruption and stuff. I was considering mounting, I'm like, oh, I'll just get dismounted through here, that's not wise. But yeah, so you can see right now, I actually have a fairly high amount of sanity. We went through this zone pretty clean. Like, all things considered, this zone was pretty clean. When I compare this to my DK, I'm actually ahead by like at least 100 sanity to where I was on my DK. Regardless though, this is like a hard choke point, I guess you could say, where we're forced to drop an orb here because there's no way we can Magister Umbric cleanly before he drains all of our sanity. So, also the last boss does not take that long to kill. If it did, we might do things differently. To do with this, by the way, you kind of just want to get behind the orbs that are coming from the boss, because he'll never fire twice in the same line in a row. So here I'm going to get behind that one and behind that last one just to make sure that I'm not getting hit by anything. But you'll see it fail at the end here. I preemptively move here because I know my Shadow Pain damage will be enough. Okay. And actually, yeah, I get hit by this on the side by one there. This Twisted Polymorph goes through. That's fine because he's going to just die to dot damage. So you see here, I'm at 940 sanity. So that's really good. It's really, really good. At this stage, there's not much that can go wrong. The run's pretty much over. It's just basically dealing with Allura. So the 4 extra mechanics you get here is obviously you're going to have the 2 basic Allura mechanics, which is the Darkened Skies, which is Swirlies, and the, I can't remember the name of the spell, but it's the Line of Sight that you need to do to not die to Allura's shit. So I'm going to just open up here. Gonna have to move from this Eye of Chaos. I didn't want to take the sanity loss, so I just cancelled my void eruption for a second there. And then I'm going to stand in this to get the buff, and we get like super good damage from that. There's the Chains of Servitude. I don't think I noticed at first, but yeah, just make sure when you're moving away that you're trying to still look away from the eye. I'm trying to get a better position, but honestly I'm kind of just spurging at that particular moment. This Tainted Polymorph I kick. I believe every Tainted Polymorph that comes up here I do have a kick for. I'm not quite in the circle, but I didn't want to be in the fire just so I could be in the circle. Chains of Servitude, I'm going to just stay out of my eye, so I just changed pillars there to not be in my Eye of Corruption. I actually have 96 stacks of my staff here. If I'd used that staff on one of those later packs, I actually could have pulled a lot bigger and been very safe with it, because that staff at 96 stacks, I want to say it does like a couple 100,000 damage at least. And so that's actually more than Focused Azurite Beam does on average, for instance, just to give you an idea of just how strong it is. But yeah, the 4 mechanics out of it is that eye, those circles on the ground that spawned all the fire, the Tainted Polymorph, which you just need to make sure you kick that at all costs, and the Chains of Servitude, which was pulling me in and silencing. And so yeah, there you go, the even more Horrific Vision of Stormwind. I hope this was helpful to any of you other Shadow Priests out there which are looking for a way of dealing with this vision. I'll be uploading more videos of Horrific Visions. I also do a lot of Mythic Plus, so there'll be some of that content coming up as well. I'm likely going to upload a couple raid kill videos as the new raid comes out next week on Mythic difficulty. This was killed in the week of the Heroic raid. So yeah, I hope to see you guys there. Subscribe to see more, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.